Uh, Good morning, and I'd like to call us to order. And welcome to the February 20th, 2024 special board meeting with Sunshine Coast Regional District. I'd like to call us to order at whatever time, 9:41, and acknowledge that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is within the territory of the Sechelt and Squamish First Nations. The first order of business is our agenda, and we are going to amend it and add an in-camera session as the first item of business. Directors, do you have any other changes? No. Okay, can I have a motion then? Yes, I see. We have a motion accepted and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. So the first item of business is to go in camera under section 91K and 92B of the community charter. Motion to go in camera, I see moved, seconder. All in favor? Okay. Director, yes, okay, thank you. That passes. Good morning and welcome back to the February 20th, 2024 special board meeting of the Sunshine Coast Regional District. We are going to take a 5-minute recess and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, welcome back to the meeting. We now will move on to the next business on our agenda, which is business arising from minutes and unfinished business. And it's the reason that this meeting was called was reconsideration of a motion pursuant to Section 217 of the Local Government Act. Chair Lee has exercised his right of reconsideration of motion 039/24, recommendation number 17 of the February 8th, 2024 regular board meeting as follows. Now, the reason that I called the meeting is that there was various directors questioning whether we'd had enough time to consider all of possible options, and was wondering if it was possible to bring forward an AAP in 2024. So with that in mind, I have prepared a resolution that we could consider, and it is that the Langdale Wellfield construction project of up to $22,750,000 funded by long-term debt be included in the 2024 to 2028 financial plan, and that staff prepare an alternate approval process, AAP, to authorize the long-term borrowing of up to $22,750,000 for up to a 30-year term for the Langdale Wellfield project, and that staff continue to explore alternate funding sources for the project, such as external grants, and further that a report to be provided to a future committee on options to fund a portion of the Langdale Wellfield construction project through community work funds and/or growing community funds. So I have made that motion. Do I have a seconder? Director Bax, thank you. It's on the floor then. And we could now discuss it, and I'd like to point out if we needed a further motion, we could always go back to the original recommendation as is on your agenda, okay? So we've got those two options on the table, but of course we could have any other motion that we wanted as well. So, Director, there is a motion on the floor, and Director Lumley, could you like to speak to that motion?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, with respect to going forward with the AAP, I know, like, just in the time between the two motions, the increase in cost was like 37% of the original. And I'm wondering if you do put an AAP out, what's the timing or what's the cost difference that I just don't, I'm just asking maybe a process question. Like, you put an AAP out for 22 million, and then by the time the project's ready to go online, it's like 34 million. Like, I just don't know how it works without knowing that we're going to start this project. Like, we've definitely got this project ready to go on the books. We're going to do AAP to get the public's approval, and then we're going to go forward with it. That, am I making any sense? I just don't know how long this would take, considering all the ramifications of getting this well on side, and whether or not the timing is right for an AAP.
Who would like to try to answer that? Yes, Corporate Officer.
So I can speak to the AAP process, and then I'll let the GM Infrastructure Services fill in the rest regarding the project. So when we go out for elector approval, we go out with an up to amount. So we have to be clear what that amount is once we go out to the electors. If it turns out at the end of the day that we end up needing more money, we have to find another way to fund that. So if we go out for elector approval up to a certain amount, that's the maximum amount that we're authorized to go through long-term borrowing for. But the other thing is, if we need less, so if we should secure some other grants or funding sources, we don't need to borrow that full amount either. So it gives us some ability to either access all or some of that long-term borrowing. And then maybe I'll let the GM speak to how we came to the amount that we actually are going to go out to and ask the electors for.
Thank you. GM Rosenboom?
Thank you for the question. The current cost estimate is based on construction starting in 2025, based on, so there's a cost increase factor for this year included. If the construction would be commenced in 2026 or later, the cost estimate will significantly increase, based on at least the last several years where, especially for these kind of projects, cost increase of 10% per year is not abnormal.
Thank you. Okay. Director McMahon, please.
Right. So I would like to ask, what would be the implications, especially to our staff, if the AAP should fail? I remember that we had a failed AAP a few years ago. Merely managing all the forms that were brought in must have sucked up a good deal of staff time and effort. So what would be the implications?
Corporate Officer?
Thank you for the question. So if the AAP fails, we cannot proceed with the bylaw for long-term borrowing unless we immediately go to an assent vote, which would occur within 80 days of the AAP, which staff are not recommending that we go immediately to an assent vote, because what that would require then is for us to start planning now for potentially having an assent vote, which would have the same impact on workload as essentially running an election. And so previously, when the water metering AAP failed, what we did is we went back and reviewed potentially other sources of funding. We can come back and ask the electors the question again in a future. Usually, I think the province says there's no established timeline, but at least 6 months should go by before we surface that question again with the electors, and something might need to have changed in that with the initiative before we go back and ask again. But we would not be able to proceed with the borrowing, and we would have to find another solution in terms of funding the project.
Follow-up, Director McMahon?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
also interested, though, in the impact on staff, because we've had things that have come at us that have overloaded staff and caused a lot of our other projects to slide. So I'm just concerned that that is a risk as well.
Yeah, so the impact would primarily be to the Legislative Services Division. So in that we would have to potentially run a second process, or maybe even the next time around that we might be directed to run an assent vote. And in a service such as water, which is a regional service, it's actually a bigger event than an election, because we would be polling every electoral area plus the District of Sechelt. So that would have a substantial impact, and we would have to maybe take a few other things off our work plan in order to accommodate that sort of a process if the board decided to go forward with a referendum.
Thank you. Director Inkster?
Yeah, that's, I know the corporate offer is referring to a poll that would have to go into 1 or 2 locations in Sechelt. I think so. That's what's meant by that. So a couple of things, Chair. I mean, we have seen costs decline in the past with projects, 2005 to 8, 9, 10, probably 2007 to 2008, 9, 10 was a decline in costs of projects and a decline in raw materials. We dealt with that at this table. So we have seen that in the past, but it's not predictable. It's just that the economy goes in cycles. The other thing that I wanted to say was I think that in reference to any kind of assent vote, that I think that if we had to do it again, that government funding would be a change, that the assent vote would change if there was a government funding that was injected into the project. That's a change in the overall project cost, which may mean we can go back. So that's just a couple of thoughts. But what I wanted to ask, though, through you, Chair, is you had said at the beginning of the meeting that the reason you brought this back is that you had heard from a couple of directors that or some directors that had indicated that they had concerns with their previous decision. What I'm asking you, because you brought it back then, and that's fair, is to hear from those that had those concerns and what their concerns were.
I am assuming that they will discuss their reasons during this session. Yes. Yep. Yes. Okay. I could have bought it back all by myself because I liked it. I could have bought it all back by myself just because I thought it should be that way as well. So, but that isn't what I said. Yes. Yes. No. I think there's a statement that staff would like to respond to in your comments. So, corporate officer, CFO, yes.
Thank you, Chair. So just wanted to clarify that if we do go ahead and include the project in the financial plan, and we do go forward with an AAP, and it was successful to the up to amount, if we receive grant funding, that would just positively impact our ability to seek out grant funding. At this point, we wouldn't, because part of grant funding, most grant funding, is that you have to have a certain amount of commitment to the other portion of the grant. So there are very rarely grant opportunities that are 100% funding. Usually it's 50-50 or 73-27. And so this would just enable our ability to apply for grants. And again, as corporate officer was mentioning, one of the positive things with having an up to amount is that you don't actually have to secure or do a security issuing for all the funding. As we did for water metering, we had an AAP to fund up to, I think, over $7 million. We received a grant for $6 million, so security issuing will be for far less than we were approved for. So it would be the same type of scenario.
Thank you for that clarification. My little screen says Director Bax next, please.
Well, I'd like to self-identify for Director Inkster as one of those directors that wanted to bring this back up again for further discussion. I initially looked at this project and thought this is an awful lot of money to spend. I've thought about it and I've researched it, and I'm going to ask some other questions today. We have hired a new legislative assistant, or someone within the legislative section of our government. So if it impacts that part of our staff, we have prepared ourselves for that in a certain way. It looks to me like this, going forward with this, and including it in the 2024 budget, will just give us more tools in our toolbox that we can use at a future date, and that there will be, if I'm not mistaken, there will be a chance in the future, should it even be approved, if there's new information coming forward that makes it difficult for us to go forward, will we be able to delay it even after we've achieved approval through the AAP process? Will we be forced to go forward, or will we have an opportunity to perhaps shift our focus to another project?
I do believe the answer to your question is the board can do whatever they like, but I will
I
go
like that
to
answer.
our CFO, I think. You'd be ready,
Yeah, I
Jen?
just wanted to clarify that when you go out for an AAP, you have to go out for a specific item and you can't use it for any other fund. So it's only for this specific item. Legislatively as well, as soon as you have approval, you have a 5-year window to initiate the security issuing. And so after that particular time, you no longer have authority. You would have to go back out to the public to do something. So once you receive approval for borrowing, it's not until there's many other factors, like Jan Rosenboom mentioned, I think during budget that essentially we would need contract approval. So we have other things that would trigger actioning the particular project, First Nations engagement, those types of things. So again, this is really just asking the electorate as to whether or not they approve the project from a financial perspective.
Thank you for the answer.
Thank you. Director Gabius, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important that we have this conversation today. I am, I was in favor of this coming back to us. My understanding is that I'm not a big fan of the project in itself. I think the cost has taken us all by surprise. The increase in cost was very substantial. But there are so many unknowns right now. We still don't know if the federal government or the provincial government is going to come through with the funding for the Chichal Reservoir projects, and which is a problem in itself that we will have to address. We also don't know how much the well will cost to operate. We don't know whether any of the test wells that we are drilling this year will, lead to any new source of water. And my main concern is that we are seeing right now the impacts of underestimating climate change. I think the previous boards did not anticipate the situation that we're in right now. And the fact that this winter is really warm, and we've had a report back about the snowpack being quite low. So, I don't want us to underestimate what's happening. So if we have a project that is sort of, kind of ready to go, and what we need to do is to take a year to do an AAP, which costs not too much. And, I guess I'm getting to a question eventually. I'd be in favor of this happening just so that we have our ducks in a row so that we're ready to take action if we need to. But I want to know first, what are the impacts of not deferring this project, so bringing it back and doing the AAP? What kind of impact will this have on staff capacity? Because I know that we have work to do with the Lower Crown Reservoir. We have work to do with fixing leaks in Sechelt, et cetera, et cetera. So I would like to know what we'd be signing up staff to do for this year, just so we're clear as to what the implications are. Thanks.
Staff would like, corporate
Thank you.
officer.
Thank you for the question. So if we do decide to run the AAP, I think the biggest impact will, of course, be on legislative services. I have contemplated it is contemplated as part of the work plan. I'm actually probably going to bundle it with a second process. So we'll do another unified process similar to what we did last year. There will also be some work for our communications department. It is a process that invites engagement with the public. And then we will have to rely on infrastructure subject matter experts to answer any type of questions that we get, related to the project. So from that perspective, maybe I'll let the GM speak to the impact on his department, but I feel that most of the workload will be managed through Leg Services, and we're prepared to carry it out should the board wish to proceed.
Thank you. GM Rosenblum.
Thank you. In addition to the response by the corporate officer, the impact to staff from my department would be minimal. It will be, as indicated, reviewing material, answering to questions, etc. It would approval of the budget proposal and moving forward with the AAP would definitely also put this project in a higher priority. I'm working on a report to bring forward at the future committee meeting with the project that might be deferred to next year because of to align the resources available within the capital projects team with the amount of projects. And this project is definitely one that will move forward anyway, but it might become a lower priority if the AP is not approved.
Follow up, Director Gabius?
Thank you. And I see that there, if we go forward with the AAP process, we'll be able to apply for grants. So with those, applying for those grants, would that take up quite a bit of staff capacity too, or quite minimal? Thanks.
Corporate Officer?
Thank you for the question. I'll let the CFO speak to that question. I just wanted to add, when I was stating the workload, that this AAP will also demand time from finance staff because they need to prepare financial statements that go to the province. So we work very closely with them through an AAP process, and I will let the CFO speak to the how the grant exploration fits in.
CFO, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Grants are really a team effort. They usually involve multiple divisions like asset management, finance, the subject matter experts. So yes, there are some considerations depending on how cumbersome the grant is. It would not be like some grant applications that are very technical and whatnot, but they do take some time, but that's contemplated again in people's work plan in the sense that there's a certain allotment for grants. So we do have staff that do that. That there is some consideration for the technical team, so subject matter experts, so water infrastructure in this realm. So, but it's not material. It's I think it's doable. Yeah.
Thank you. Director McMahon?
I have a bunch of questions, but I'll start with the level of commitment here. So if we approve this, then it's in the budget, but does it come back to us for a press go on the actual AAP, or are we pressing go if we commit now?
Who would like to answer that one? Corporate Officer? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Yes, there will be multiple reports that'll come forward. There will be a report coming forward to kick off the AAP confirming, the term and the grant amount and a loan authorization bylaw. So that would be the first step. And depending on the timeline, it could be as soon as end of March. Once budget is adopted, we would move pretty quickly on initiating that process.
Follow up?
Right. And in terms of commitments, we had looked at committing some community works funds and the other funds. So if we make that decision as part of the budget, are we committed to that as well?
CFO?
So I think the motion presented contemplates that we'll discuss that at a future time and that the AAP will be executed, if approved, based on the full ask. And again, that's because we don't have the exact amount for how much would be contributed from other sources, including grants. So again, part of the contemplation of cost escalations for the projects, all of that could be in play. So there's still a lot to contemplate and a lot of decision points to still come back to the board. That being one of them is other sources of funds, including community works. One of the other things, if I could, Chair, also note is we haven't received the new Community Works Funds agreement from the federal government through the UBCM, so we don't actually know what's going to be contemplated there, but all indications was as much as we can commit our funding or allocate it, the better. So that's also why one of the benefits of coming back and committing those funds to projects would be beneficial for the SRD. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Toth, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a number of questions, but seeing that there are hands up, I'll try and keep it short, and I'll sort of follow up with Director McMahon. Is there any opportunity for us to use DCC funds on this project? I haven't seen them mentioned at all anywhere through it. I know that it's not technically part of the DCC bylaw as a project, but is there any way to get it included within that? Thank you.
CFO?
Yes, thank you. So there's a lot of changes related to DCCs with the new provincial legislation, and staff are actively attending sessions, legal sessions, ministry sessions related to that. So as our bylaw currently sits for DCC, it's very prescriptive as to what those funds do or are allowed to use, and this would not be in accordance with this at this time. So that's part of the contemplation for additional changes to DCCs, so more to come on that.
Thank you. Director Bax?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate my approval of this process. It looks to me like if we go forward with including this into the financial plan, that there will be, again, times within the future, as the chair mentioned, that the board can do whatever the board wants, that we will have a chance to change focus in the future. My concern is that we continue along this path for now to make sure that we're not cutting ourselves off. If we were to turn down this motion today, the delay on this project would be a year and a half, 2 years. I don't know. How long would the delay be? And that delay would remove this this particular project from the picture for that period of time. And then and I'm worried that would happen. I think we need to have we need to diversify our water supply as much as possible within, and we have to try and sell it to the public. And if the public says no, fair enough, then we won't go ahead, because all I'm hearing from them is we need to diversify our water system. And if they don't back this, then they've given us another message.
The
Question
I
is-
believe the question was, if we don't go with the AAP this year, how long would it delay the project? GM Rosenboom?
Thank you for the question. Of course, on the permitting and design front, as I just indicated, it might delay the project a little bit into 2025. I think as part of next year's budget process, the board could, of course, reconsider including these costs in the budget. So currently, this project is the earliest it can provide water to the community in 2027. It could easily be 2029 if the project is delayed.
Follow-up?
I'm just reiterating, he said 2 years. So that the initial, if we go ahead today, it's 2027, summer 2027, but then Director Rosenboom, sorry, GM Rosenboom said that it would be 2029 before this project came online.
Yes, that's just actually what I wrote down in my notes. I believe that was the answer. Yes. Okay, Director McMahon, please.
Yes, as others have said, we have a lot of balls in the air right now. And I have heard speculation that an imminent provincial budget might tell us whether or not Lower Crown gets funded. So why are we in a hurry to pass the budget? And what would be the implications if we delayed approving the budget?
Who could answer that? CFO?
Well, I think I'm taking what staff on both legislative and the operational team have said, and that's, I think, your answer, which is the project would be delayed a couple of years, and we wouldn't be able to action multiple things like other sources of revenue, allocating funds to it. It would not be online for a couple of years. I think that's a decision of the board.
I believe the question, put a different way, is what if we didn't make the decision today and waited another week or two to do it? Is that your question, or?
Yeah, I understand we're supposed to vote on the budget on Thursday.
Yeah.
That's the earliest I think the SCRD would have ever passed a budget before. If we decided to dither for another 2 weeks, what effect would that have?
CFO?
Well, we wouldn't be able to action anything that the board's approved. It's not just this one. The other thing too is you want to consider is if you adopt the bylaw as it stands, to omit such a significant and material item in an amendment, because legislatively and from a public sector accounting standard, you can only articulate your approved budget. So amendments kind of legislatively, you have to approve an amendment to the bylaw, but you report based on your original bylaw. So I think it would be disingenuous to approve a budget that didn't have essentially a 50%, over 50% more capital project. You would probably want to delay your entire bylaw. Now, part of what the reason why we're moving our bylaws and approval of our financial plans earlier than the legislative March 31st date is recognizing that we have such a substantive amount of work plan, and we want to get earliest approval to get started, because staff can't action anything that has been approved until the bylaw has been approved. So we would basically halt everything that's in there. So that would be my recommendation. And because this is so significant and material, this would not be something, and I haven't consulted the ministry. I was contemplating, but we probably wouldn't have had time for response. But I'm pretty certain that they would recommend that you delay the approval of your bylaw till you have decision on this. The only exception would be if you had a change in source of funding from a grant decision. That's what would be contemplation typically for an amendment to the bylaw or to the financial plan bylaw is the change of funding, but at least you'd have the project in there. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. I see Director McMahon crunching that through. Anyways, I'll move on. Director Gabius?
Thank you, Chair. I feel challenged to make this decision because there are so many balls in the air, as Director McMahon said, and a lot of them we don't know if they're going to fall into place or if they're going to be removed. And I just, it's hard to say yes or no when I don't know where the balls fall on a timeline. Like, what is the strategy? What are we prioritizing first? Like, what would a delay of 1 or 2 years, how would that affect the timeline? So I feel like I would like to see a more complete plan. But we unfortunately don't have that. There's so many reasons why, like waiting for funding and permits and et cetera. But does staff have any kind of scenarios as to, like, should Lower Crown go forward? Where does that leave us? Should it not go forward? What are the implications of that? And siphons and EFN and is there a way to get a bit of a clearer picture, like very high level, as to what what the next 10 years look like? Just, easy question.
That seems like a fair question. Director GM Rosen, oh, okay, sorry, our CAO has stepped in here.
Sure, I'll take the first stab at it, and GM Rosenblum can provide some additional information. I would say in terms of where would it leave us if we were to delay on Langdale for a year or two? It's one of many projects. There's no single project that's going to solve our water supply issue, whether it's Lower Crown, Langdale, one of the 5 test wells that we're drilling, any number of possibilities. It's sort of a yes and approach that we've been taking. So it's yes, we need more sources. Yes, we need to continue to diversify our sources. EFN and siphons remain a really important tool in our toolbox, probably for quite some time. Lower Crown, if it was to proceed and was able to provide the up to 900 cubic meters that it's forecast to be able to possibly provide, is only 23 or 24 days of water based on stage 3. So is it a difference maker? Absolutely. But siphons provide over 2 times that water annually. So if we were unable to continue using the siphons, we'd need 2 Lower Crowns plus some additional supply. So we're still looking at moving forward with as many potential projects as possible to try to figure out which ones have the highest yield at the most reasonable financial implications and have the maximum amount of support to move forward with.
Thank you. GM Rosenblum?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to add to this. Thank you, CEO. As CEO just indicated, more than one project is required to really move us forward. And we've seen 2 years ago that even with 2 siphon systems in place, Chapman and Edwards, we were in a situation that we were not fully out of the woods yet. So this year, we have to see how this year is going to look like. As indicated last week, expressed to the Words the Coast reported, there's a lot of uncertainty yet how this year will look like. But climate change is continuing to surprise us, and not in a favorable way. We don't have permits secured for long-term use of the siphon systems. So if those, we would not be able to use one of these systems, as the CEO is indicating, we lose the access to about 1 million cubes of water, which is more than Langdale would provide us, which is more than Lower Crown would provide us at a way lower cost. So, however, those permits are issued to us on an emergency basis. So they can be retracted at any given time by the provincial government. So the risk of not moving ahead with Langdale or delaying it for another 2 years, there is a risk associated to it that in terms of our water supply provisions, we actually go backwards instead of forwards. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO, I see your hand is up. Did you have further comments?
No, sorry, and I'll take my hand down.
Okay, thank you. Director Toth?
Thank you, Chair. I'm still struggling with the operational costs of this particular well field because we don't know them yet, and we're not likely to know them until probably after it's built and commissioned. So the closest thing we have to compare to is the Church Road well field. And so I've got a couple of questions on the Church Road well field that hopefully will help inform sort of Langdale's information. When we commissioned Church Road, I believe at the time we thought that we would be able to absorb the operational costs within budget. But I recall we had to actually do some lifts to operate the Church Road well field. And so I'm just looking to know, very rough, how much did we have to lift the operational budget to run the Church Road well field? And then I'll ask the second Church Road question at the same time, which if we had Church Road online at 4.6 million liters per day in 2022, would we have needed to go to a state of local emergency?
GM Rosenblum, could you try that one?
Thank you for the question. Additional costs for Church Road are to some extent comparable with Langdale, but also not. Langdale will have additional treatment capacity required, which will require additional staff time. There's more treatment required than only chlorination. And there will be residual management involved, et cetera, et cetera. So based on that, the operational costs will be higher than for Church Road. How much exactly, as you just alluded to, that's still to be confirmed. I don't have a clear number in my head. I'm thinking 80,000 for Church Road, but I'm not sure if that's the right amount. I think it's over 100, as my CFO is indicating, thousands a year. But the actual cost, we just have to determine because I'm not sure if that's also fully including all the work that we have to do for the environmental flow need monitoring, which is not part of Langdale. So there are costs that were occurring for Church Road that we won't not occur for Langdale. So it's not a complete apples to apples comparison. 2022 situation, as we all know, we almost depleted the Chapman siphon system, and we needed Edwards to provide us with additional water. Church Road, if we would have had it online at the start of that year, it might have been a toss. But I think I would have moved forward with Edwards siphoning system construction because I might have not have known if we actually needed it or not.
Thank you. Director Inkster.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to ask some process questions, one to you perhaps, and one through you to the corporate officer. Do you have the ability today to put this vote to another day as the chair? Just asking, I'm just looking at the votes and what has been made today. I know it's important to this board to make the right decision. I'm not suggesting that another day would be the right decision. I'm just suggesting that more thought and more information may lead to the right decision. That's my question through to you. My second question, if in fact it does not pass today, this particular vote through you to the corporate officer, can it be brought back soon or in the next few months to have an additional firm affirmation or defeated decision on this issue? This is a really important decision with a lot of balls in the air, with a lot of information that's not complete.
Corporate officer, I believe that you could answer that question for us.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So today we're here to make a decision on a matter that the chair has brought back for reconsideration. If a decision is not to be made today, then I would suggest that perhaps a motion has come forward referring it to another meeting. So that would be the appropriate pathway to not making a decision today. If we don't make a decision today, then there's the question of our financial plan bylaw that is scheduled to come forward on Thursday for adoption. So we'll still not have the project in the financial plan. So we'll also have to decide what the implication is in terms of the budget bylaw. And based on what I've heard the CFO say, and she can confirm, we won't be adopting our budget bylaw this week should we not make a decision today, is my understanding.
CFO.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend you pass the bylaw unless you've made this decision.
Okay. Follow up.
That's an interesting additional piece, the financial bylaw, which needs to have a number of pieces in place and long-term spending pieces in place for that bylaw to occur. I would then ask through you to the financial officer if in fact, when can the financial bylaw then pass legislatively to meet those requirements within the fact that this may need to come back? How much time do we have?
Have a go at that?
Legislatively, a regional district must adopt its financial plan by March 31st of each year. So that would be the recommended window to make this decision for 2024.
That is the recommended decision for 2024 to put this in the plan, and we have till the end of March. 5 weeks.
Yes. I do believe, though, that our CFO explained the additional problems of delaying that bylaw adoption, including not being able to work on several projects. I believe that's what was said. So that's something to consider when we talk about this. Director McMahon, please.
Right. I just want to apologize. My camera has gone off and it won't restart. Perhaps I've caught something from Director Stanford, but Zoom is unable to detect a camera. Thank you, Zoom. Just communications. Do we have sufficient resources? Because I am concerned around the AAP. We are getting increasing volumes of email and other communications that make it clear that there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there. And I am concerned that the AAP could be widely misunderstood within the community. So we need, if we're going to do it, we need to have a really, truly robust communications plan to explain this, especially since we're asking people to approve spending that we're not absolutely sure we're going to need, which is a weird kind of place to be. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think there was a question there, or maybe there was about communications. Are we prepared for a robust communication? Yes, okay.
Thank you for the question. Yes, every AAP we do comes with a communications plan, and this particular process is built into our work plan. So we were anticipating this, and if the board approves it, it will become a priority, and it will happen.
And that would include community presentations most likely as well, right? Okay, thank you. Director Bax.
Yeah, being fairly new here, I do understand the staff's chomping at the bit to get the funding in place to make sure that you guys can start planning your workload. No? Okay. But my question is that although it seems that this year we may have decisions we may need information from the provincial government's budget to base some of our decisions on. Is that, well, if, from my perspective, I'm looking at the provincial budget as there is going to be some information brought forward this week in the provincial budget that may affect some of the projects that we're involved in. And I was wondering if that is a common thing. Would it not be more prudent for our financial, for our budget to be approved after the provincial budget comes down? Is that not more prudent?
That's probably a CFO question here.
I believe just clarity on where projects and resources are allocated can be clarified from the GM. So I'm gonna defer and then I'll jump in if there's any clarity, but just understanding which projects are contemplated in the financial plan and what's intended in the scope of those projects might help.
Jim?
Thank you very much, Ivo. Lower Crown, we have staff capacity to review Lower Crown. We are working on reviewing the Lower Crown feasibility study as developed by the nation to confirm if we have any concerns with what is currently there proposed. Any funding approval by the province for the project would of course be great news and would allow us to work even more closely in an expedited manner with the Seychelles Nation to advance this project. As just indicated, we have capacity to work on both projects at the same time. They are not the timing. The scope is different. The timing is more or less parallel. The one that gets the funding approved the earliest might get the most attention, and the other one might be a little bit late, but they're not biting each other in terms of us working on them.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a very important answer.
Yes. Okay, Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm not comfortable with this project at this time. District to Seychelles Council is supportive of taking the year to look at more options and figuring out what else is out there. If we find out that the 5 wells in Seychelles area aren't viable, then we lean on the ministers hard. I think we're going to hear back on those wells about the time of the provincial election. And so maybe that's an opportunity where we can get this project moving forward as part of an election issue if we have to see if we can try and buy back some of the time that we've taken this year to make sure that we're making the right decision. I'm not confident that an AAP would pass at this time. I don't have polling numbers or anything like that. It is just my gut feeling in talking to residents in Seychelles. And so I got to ask myself, why would I ask our staff to go through that process if I'm not confident we're going to get approval? And, let's be real here in that the majority of the water that this well is providing is needed in Seychelles. So are we really willing to pipe water the length of the lower coast just because we couldn't wait to find out if there is water in Seychelles itself? And, if there is a well in Seychelles that's as safe to use and nearly as productive as Langdale, then we go for it where it's needed. If we want to talk about long pipelines and expensive projects, let's look at Coahome. Thanks.
Jim, could you comment on the long pipeline issue?
Thank you for the question. Part of the if Church Road and Langdale would be both online at the same time, there might be a need to make a small adjustment to our pump station currently in Roberts Creek, and that's the only change that we are currently considering. And that's not a major capital investment that would be required there. So there's no additional infrastructure upgrades required other than connecting the Langdale system to our current system. And that would allow the water to be transferred all the way to the top of Secret Cove without any significant operational cost.
Thank you. Director Gabius, please.
Thank you, Chair. And, I share a lot of the concerns that Director Toth has, but the way I understand it is we're not approving necessarily the project. We're not saying, yes, go ahead and build it. We're kind of keeping it in the queue, like we're doing the AAP so that it is available to us should we need it or should we decide to go forward with it. It would give us time to apply for permits, for grants. So to me, it's not so much like we're not saying yes or no. So it gives us a bit of leeway. But interesting comments about, should the AAP fail, then what? Then what happens? And I don't know if staff has any comments on, you know, if the AP was to fail, does that mean we can't do it again later? Or like, what are the implications of that process failing?
Corporate officer?
Thank you for the question. So if the AAP fails, yes, we can do it again. We can repeat the process. But we do have to let time lapse between something needs to change if we're bringing the question back to the electors.
I'd like to give an example of something similar that did occur. That's what happened with the water meters. It failed. We didn't put them in. We finally decided we had to have water meters. We did it again, and it passed, and now we're putting them in. So that would be a very similar situation to what you're talking about. Oops, Director McMahon, please.
Thank you. Do I remember that AAP. And that was a fairly straightforward question or issue compared to this one, which is complicated, not well understood, and yeah, I'm having a very hard time with this too, because I think that embarking on an AAP at this point is going to turn out to be a real snake pit. And the reason, one of the primary reasons that we lost that other AAP was our failure to really get out ahead of the communications, big time. Like, this is something that, to me, we will have to set the groundwork for well in advance in order to make sure that the issue and the options are understood in the public realm. And I'm having a hard time seeing us being able to do that right now, especially when all of us are conflicted about the project in the first place. That makes it really hard to be a compelling proponent of a project that I have some misgivings about. So, not that it is a bad project, it's just that we have so many alternatives in front of us, some of which I think would be better, or we hope would be better. We'll know more when we know if there's water in Sechelt. But yeah, I'm having enormous trouble with this, even though I see the logic in having more options available, which is what this AAP is about, is to give us a maximum number of options for water quickly. And so I do understand that, but I'm torn too. Thank you.
Well, I think we're going to have to vote. I can't see anything changing. Oh, GM Rosenboom?
Sorry for this late addition. Just want to clarify, we talked about a lot of information, and a lot of pieces of information were presented today or discussed. One piece of information was not presented yet, is that the earliest, there was discussion about the potential wells in the Sechelt area. The earliest we can have one of those online, if everything goes well, is 2031. So delaying of this project could result in the earliest we would have, depending on, it of course depends on lower ground. Lower ground would help us, but lower ground would actually offset one siphon system. So the next one emergency siphon system, I have to refer to that. So the next available water source would then be Langdale at the earliest in 2029, otherwise will be 2031. Craig Creek is in the mix as well, but that's still to be determined if that's a feasible source. We're not ready there yet as well. Thank you.
Yes, I think there was a kind of a need to have this meeting by the sound of it. Yes, Director Toth?
Thank you. So in the Seashalt area, we're looking at from identifying a well location to a well source online, 7 years, which is, I think, probably a new record for the regional district in terms of operating sources. I don't have anything to say further than that. Just, yeah, that's 7 years.
Yes, that was actually pointed out to us at an earlier report. Director McMahon.
And finally, the other piece that's out there is the impact of water meters on the usage in Seashell. We don't know what that's going to be. In Gibson's, it was dramatic. The water usage, the impact of leak fixing and then volumetric billing reduced their water consumption by almost 50%. That's dramatic. And we can't count on that happening, but it's an important other factor in this equation, and it doesn't come with the same level of commitment to increased operating costs. So, yeah, this is an incredibly hard decision.
Whoa, we're back at her again. Director Gabius, please.
And we're back. Thank you, Chair. Just a question regarding the 7-year timeline. What is the biggest factor? What makes it so long? Is it permitting? Is it the building itself? Is it, can staff comment on that?
GM Rosenboom, you want to try that one off the top of your head?
Yes, I will give it a try. It's all based on experience in terms of Chapman or Church Road. It totally depends on what kind of well it is, what the potential risk is for environmental impact. In the case of Church Road, we had our EFN that we needed to assess. Infrastructure required, construction of infrastructure. In Seasheld, we most likely are in the Seasheld area. We're most likely in a more urbanized area, which will make the design and construction more complicated. Permitting in Church Road took 2.5 years ish. Maybe it's a little bit faster in nowadays, but it's those kind of considerations. And so by the end of the year, we hope to have an understanding if there's even enough water available at one of these sources. But any of the design work, preliminary design, final design, and potentially an AEP is still to be conducted at that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lumley?
Yeah, based on the flow rates, like from testing from Church and let's say Langdale, and following up on Director McMahon's hypotheses, probably would be true that your rates are cut in half once your metering's done. Would that, I don't want to say solve like the continued crisis, but would it give you a buffer of some kind, like moving into the future? Like if these three things happen, then I mean, can't you sell that to the public? Like if you're going to do this, I mean, is that possible? Like, is that potential? Like Langdale, Church, and then the metering? Is it kind of like, are you in the clear at that point? That was my question.
Yes, I think we've all got guesses, but I think I will go to C.O. McKinley for that one.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really difficult to quantify it with any great degree of certainty. But if we achieve through metered billing and leak repair, detection and repair, say 30%, a 30% decrease in overall water usage, that would equate to almost the same amount of water that's proposed to be provided by Lower Crown. It'd be around 802,000 cubic meters or so. Lower Crown being 900, it'd be a little more than Church Road, a little less than Lower Crown.
I'm not going to take my guess. Yes, GM Memko? Sorry, GM Rosenboom?
I'm responding to both. Thank you. It should be mentioned that the number that CEO is referring to and the meters that are being installed is only half of our system because half our system is already metered. So the impact of the installation of meters is actually less than it would be, of course, for example, with the town of Gibsons that had the entire system metered. And in both cases, Lower Church Road and the metering and Lower Ground, any of these sources are still less than one of our emergency cipher system that we don't have a guaranteed permitting for long term. And there can be changes to those within upcoming years as well.
Thank you. Okay. Director Bax, please.
Yeah, I want to thank staff today for their answers, and especially GM Rosenboom. You've assuaged some of my concerns about this project as far as pumping the water into Seashell. Doesn't seem like it's a big deal. If we make a decision to go forward with this project, it could be 3 years. We could have water from this. If we don't, it would be 5 years. So we're looking at a 2-year delay. As you can tell, I'd be voting for this to put it into our toolbox. I think it's an important tool that we can, we're going to get bang for our buck here. I looked at the finances behind it. It's about $14,000 to run an AAP. And this is going to give us a very important tool that we can use at our leisure. We have 5 years to do it, to implement it. And if we delay it now, it's just going to add, we're shrinking our ability to diversify our system. And I just have to say that I think that the answers that came forward from staff today really set my fears at ease. And I think that if we go out and sell this, that maybe the AAP will pass.
Thank you, Director Bax. Director Inkster, please.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. I don't think, I think it's the board's role to sell this, not staff's. Staff's role is to present information. And if this decision is made, it's not necessary, it's not something that will sit there, it will be something we'll do. So if the decision is made and we budget the money and we direct staff, we'll be doing it. It won't be in abeyance in any sense. I just wanted a clarification through you to staff. 31, we hear 2031 on the wells having potable water, I guess we'll call that, if in fact it's identified that there's enough in those wells in Seashell. Was 2031 as a date in which potable water will be provided from those wells to the community and predicted year delivery based on a work plan that included Langdale well?
Yes, GM Rosenboom.
Yes, it is. However, I don't think that, as they're both a priority for the board as per the strategic plan, both would be resourced at the same time and it wouldn't be competing. I think if there would be competing interests, other priorities other projects approved by the board might be deferred, delayed, and these two projects would move forward in an expedited manner at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Director McMahon, please.
If we build this into the budget, it will come back to us again for a final decision on going to AAP, as I understand. So we could have this whole discussion again. In about when? When would we likely have a report on the AAP?
Corporate Officer.
Thank you for the question. The timeline that I currently have flagged, depending when the budget bylaw gets read, end of March. So probably the last meeting in March, I would bring forward a loan authorization bylaw and a staff report outlining the process for an alternative approval process.
Yes, I just want to be clear on implications for taxation. Perhaps our CFO could cover that for me.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So because this is part of the regional water service, so the AAP process itself, so I think approximately $12,000 that are outlined in the staff report are anticipated to be absorbed within existing budgets, staff time, et cetera. So there's no impacts to, and then the actual cost of borrowing would not actually happen until the project began. So one of the items I also wanted to outline, in addition to decision points regarding the AAP, there's also another decision point, which would be when the project would come forward as part of the 2025 budget as a carry forward. So every year you are going to revisit this particular project as part of that process as well. So in addition to, say, contract awards or any type of other type of work associated with it, then there will be other decision points coming to the board that either puts the item in the financial plan or doesn't. So it's not, the AAP does not bind you to commit you to the project. You can always, like we did for other projects as we've abandoned. So for instance, the Chapman watershed expansion, that was removed from the financial plan, although we had an active AAP for that one. So it by not having it in the financial plan precludes you from the ability to borrow. So that would be the nature of this as well.
Thank you. Everybody does know that was a mention of lowering the output in the Chapman Dam. That did fail. That was the comment there. We'd got through the design phase. We got to where we actually were going to start digging, and then it was canceled at that point. Okay. I think we're good. I think I will call the question. There is a motion on the floor. Sorry, Corporate Officer?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to confirm the voting, as there was an error on the agenda, and I want to make sure that those coming in remotely are clear that the voting on this resolution will be all directors, and it will be a weighted vote. It will pass by a majority vote, and we need 10 votes to pass. And because some of the cameras are not working, I would request that those directors remotely please ensure that they raise their hand to be included in the count.
The weighted vote is actually shown under the heading reports, if anyone's wondering about the weight. Okay. So I will, everybody's aware of, remembers the motion that was made at the beginning that we handed out? Okay. All those in favor? There's 2. All those opposed? Let's see, sorry, I forgot to check. I'll have to call that question again because I didn't check for hands from Director Stanford. So if we could go again for all those in favor of the motion? And I'd say Director Stanford is not in favor. Okay. Then we'll call all those opposed. Okay. That motion fails by a substantial margin. So we now need another motion. Would anybody like to take a try at another motion? Director Toth, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess the easiest thing for me to do is to say that the previous budget proposal be deferred until 2025. Does that accurately capture?
corporate officer, would that, in other words, the suggestion is that we reaffirm recommendation number 17.
Thank you for the question. So the path forward to that would be to move that recommendation as previously adopted. So to put it back on the floor, and the directors will vote on it again.
Okay, so the motion is to bring back recommendation number 17, Regional Water Service 370 2024 R2 budget proposal as originally presented. So I can call the question. There's a motion has been made by Director Toth. It's been seconded by Director McMahon. Any discussions on that one? No? Okay. So now we will vote on it. All those in favor? Sorry?
He's not here. We got quorum.
Yep. Okay. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Any opposed? I don't see anyone opposed. Thank you. That motion is carried. We can't say we didn't take time, though, this time.
I will grant you that.
Yeah. Okay. So, we've already accepted the report as received when we approved the agenda, so that is done. We have no communications, we have no further motions, no business. We finished our in-camera. I would welcome a motion to adjourn. Director Toth, seconded Director Gabius. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Now let's see if we have any questions. There's no one in the gallery here, so we have no questions in the gallery. We have one attendee in the virtual gallery. Don't see any hand up. Okay, so we are done. Thank you very much, everybody.